Good morning, everybody. Today is Tuesday, October 28th, 2025. Hope everybody is doing well. We are back for another trading session on the NQ Futures. We will be trading the NinZaRenko chart again today, using a similar strategy to what we were doing yesterday. Identifying key areas, looking for potential reversals or breakouts if the runway is clear. We are about 8 minutes before market opens. We just made brand new all-time highs overnight, more like a few minutes ago. Let me go ahead and mark that real quick. Marking my levels and trend lines. So for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, or at least tuning in for the first time for this Renko chart setup, a lot of you might wonder, what is it? It looks so different than a traditional candlestick chart, and it is. So a Renko chart is a chart that focuses purely on price movement using what's called bricks. So every one of these blue bricks or red bricks, blue bricks are going to be bullish and red bricks are going to be bearish. A new brick is not going to be formed unless two or more points in one particular direction occurs. And so what's nice about Renko charts is that you'll quickly spot when the market is stuck, because then it'll stop laying these bricks in one particular direction. But if we have smooth price action, then you'll start noticing that the bricks are being layered one on top of the other in a particular direction, whether it's bearish or bullish. And so with our corresponding strategy that we're using, where we are waiting for price to come into an area of interest and looking for potential reversals or breakouts or retests, the Renko chart is actually a really good way to spot whether the reversal is going to occur or not. So that's the theory behind why we're using Renko charts this morning. We're still going to be using our trend lines, and essentially we're going to be waiting to get into an area of interest, look for a reversal, and if the runway is clear, we will take the trade. It's really as simple as that. Now, in theory, it sounds simple. In practice, it does take a lot of practice, but hopefully you guys will see plenty of examples in this trading session this morning. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up is what constitutes a trigger for a reversal, right? So anytime you get a bunch of bricks laying down in one direction like this, An opposite trigger is when you get 4 bricks in a row. 1, 2, 3, 4. Except we wouldn't have taken this reversal to go back up because we have what's called the T line. This dotted red line is the 233 exponential moving average. That is a very common indicator that you use when you're talking about trading the Renko. And also, it didn't come into an area of interest. Now, price did come into an area of interest up here because the 50 level is one of our areas of interest, and it did pull back. So 1, 2, 3, 4 gave a trigger to go down. But the problem is the initial candle, the initial reversal candle, and let me zoom in so you guys can really see, was above where the T line is, and you can see the T line here acted as support. So if, pretend for a second we had this trend line that looked like this, and there was no T line, then the runway is clear for us to take it for a bearish trade and go down. And when trading this, I also like to automatically take 8 points of profit and 7-point stop loss. So my trades are almost always going to be either a 7-point loser or an 8-point winner. And the other adjustment I did to my ATM strategy on Ninja is that if price goes 5 points in my favor, I will automatically have a trailing stop loss at break even that will keep moving in the direction of my trade so that we can lock in profits. Because at that point, if it decides to reverse and go the other way, I don't want to take a stop loss. So at that point, it would be close to a break-even trade. So here's another point of interest. It's a standard deviation level, this dotted blue line. We are looking like it wants to reverse back down. The problem is we have all these areas of support underneath us, so we would not be taking this trade back down if it formed 4 bearish bricks to the downside. So we have about 1 minute before market opens. I'm looking to see if we have any news this morning, and it doesn't look like we have anything except at 10 o'clock. We do have CB consumer confidence, but that's tentative. I'm sure it's tentative because of the government shutdown. So we'll keep an eye on the 10 o'clock candle. All right, we just made brand new all-time highs here. So at this point, I'm waiting for it to come back down to this standard deviation level and see if we can get a trade higher, which we missed. See if it'll come back down and get us. It happened way too fast, so go ahead and cancel that. Probably get back in here. She got a terrible entry for this, but this one did work. So that's our first trade. We got 8 points to the upside. Delete all the trend lines that we've already have gone through. Price is kind of slowing down a little bit here. We won't be able to take this reversal here if it goes back up because we have this trend line in the way. Okay, it decides to keep going down. Same thing with this reversal area here. We have the standard deviation level in the way and we still have that trend line. If this reversal happens, we can take it to the upside, but it did not. Update this trend line here. Okay, now it looks like we're trying to transition into a downtrend. Problem is we had that upward trend line before that initial trigger lower, so I had to skip this bearish trade. And you can see here it was a false positive bearish signal. We have the same problem here again if it decides to come back down a second time. Second time it did work. And you can see I'm just updating my trend lines over and over and over, just to kind of get a feel for what the market is respecting. I probably could have taken this bearish, but I missed it because there was enough room for us to take it for 8 points before we hit this trend line here. So that's unfortunate. But sometimes the charts will move very fast, and it's okay if you miss a trade. There's always going to be another one. Zooming out to see if we have any other trends where I can draw this trend line from. So we can't take it bearish if it decides to reverse. We don't have enough room before we hit this level of support here. And then this reversal to the upside, the initial trigger was below this trend line here. If we didn't have that trend line, I probably could have taken it up. So we're just looking for higher quality setups here and not just random reversal trades. And sometimes the mediocre reversal setups will work, like this one. I wouldn't necessarily call this mediocre, it just doesn't align with my rules. I mean, the same thing with this reversal here. It would have run into this trend line, but it does end up working for 8 points. Now, this one we can probably take. So you can see I put my stop loss 2 ticks below where the initial reversal candle is. But it is struggling. All right, there we go. I got slightly above break even on this, didn't quite get my 8 points. Gonna update some trend lines here. We have quite a few of them. We're gonna delete these lines here because we've gone through them. And for those of you who are just tuning in and are a little confused about what type of chart this is, that's completely normal. I remember when I first looked at a Renko chart, I was really puzzled. So feel free to send me a message and we can talk offline. I might be doing a Renko tutorial video as well on how to set it up, what is it, how to take advantage of it. And so right now we're just waiting for price to come into an area of interest. We are at an area of interest right here. But if it did pull back and retest and go back up, we might be running into this downward trend line that I have drawn here. We do end up deleting this line because we did go through it. Delete this line as well. And now we draw a new line from this high to this lower high. This would, if you get 4 bricks here, it would constitute a trigger, but it would be, in my opinion, a false positive because this trend line's in the way. But it looks like it's just going through it. And believe it or not, Renko is actually a chart where you need to be very, very, very patient to be profitable. A lot of people look at a Renko chart and just say, hey, I'm going to trade every single reversal. And that's just not going to work for you in the long run. The math is not going to be in your favor. All right. We have this trend line as well. You can see we're in this wedge. If you zoom out, all-time highs are up here. at 26,094.75. And so right now our next area of interest is going to be at that standard deviation level up there at 98, or potentially the 100 level up there. So let's just see how price behaves if we get up there. We'll delete this trend line here. We broke through this trend line, so we'll delete that. We would have had this trend line, but we broke through it here. We have this double top here. Probably going to break through it, but we'll see. Maybe, maybe not. So you can see here, Renko's a really good way of showing when price is stuck as well. Again, you're going to see me draw a ton of trend lines. A lot of them are going to get deleted, but it just gives me, it helps gauge the trend for me. So we came back down into an area of interest with this T line. We are getting that reversal up, but there's all this resistance overhead here. So I wouldn't be taking this signal to go higher. And you can see here it stopped out. We got a second reversal signal up here, but notice where it triggered. It triggered underneath this trend line as well. So and then this bearish signal also triggered, but we didn't have a lot of room between this trend line that I just drew and the standard deviation level before hitting 8 points, but it did end up pushing through both of those levels. We are coming up into our next area of interest at the 50 level. Good to see you on here, Rebecca. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me. We could talk about this one-on-one. I would be more than happy to share my insights. I actually think this is a really fun trading system, and I think it's visually easier to see when candles are reversing because it literally changes colors, right? All right, I'm zooming out just to see where the market potentially wants to go. And the next area of interest underneath us is going to be VWAP. And these areas of interest are typically magnets, right? So this is where price wants to potentially go. There's other ways you can also name it, like areas of liquidity. But I just try to keep my terminology very, very simple and approachable. Oops. Let me zoom in a little bit here. We're retesting this bigger upward trend line here. If we break through it and close below it, I will delete this line, but it looks like we're bouncing off of it. And sometimes as soon as you draw a trend line, it gets tested and broken through, and that's okay. The other thing I forgot to mention, and why I really like this system, is that my stop loss is universal. And what does that mean? Like almost always my stop loss is going to be around 7 points. So I've essentially normalized what my stop loss is, whereas in my other strategies my stop loss is based on the length of the signal candle, right? So in this case, you can actually plan and say, you know what? I don't want to take any more than 2 stop losses in a session, and you know exactly how much that's going to cost you. So that actually helps you with your planning as far as how much you're willing to risk, your trade management, your risk management. All right, so we're breaking through these 2 levels here. And I find that really, really helpful. So we're probably gonna go, looks like we want to make our way down to the VWAP down here, but we'll see. Nothing is certain, right? It's all a game of probability. And right now this price action, as you can see, is very choppy. You can literally see the choppiness in the Renko very easily. But we're finally starting to break down. If we would have come up all the way to this dotted red line, which is the T line, and reverse, we would have been able to take it to the downside, but it didn't come all the way up to the T line, unfortunately. But this would have been a nice bearish signal here if we would have touched the T line. That's just one of my rules. We got to actually test the area of interest. Okay, that's my 9:55 alarm because in 5 minutes we do have news. And when there is a lot of volatility in the market, you will see this Renko chart move very quickly. And at that point, it may not even be tradable. So you would probably just sit on your hands if that happened. Can delete this line. The 50 level is an area of interest, but we do have this T line underneath us, so I can't take it bearish. And you could see out of nowhere, this price just decided to go super high, and this is where a lot of Renko candles, or they're called bricks, got formed because the price just decided to skyrocket up, right? So we're going to update our trend lines here. And then we're going to update our downward trend line because this is the last high here. It's a small tick. You may not be able to see it on the screen, and this is a lower high. And then we have this high and this lower high right there as another trend line. if we get a reversal in this area, do we have enough room to take it? No. We don't have enough room. And the way I eyeball that is I see if we have room for 10 points. And if we don't have room for 10 points, then I don't want to take my 8-point target. Because an 8-point target, if we have room for 10, then more than likely we'll be able to hit 8, because 8 is inside the 10, right? So drawing a new upward trend line now, right here, from this wick to this higher low. And the reason why we didn't take this bearish signal here is because we have this trend line in the way and we have 50 in the way. So again, going back to my analogy I talked about last week, we have to make sure the runway is clear in order for us to take the trade. That there are no obstacles in the way. We do have about 1 minute until the 10 o'clock news, so probably going to see some volatility at 10 o'clock. And now we have a few trend lines. And the trend lines also help to show when we are in a tight trading range as well. So you can see we're in this very tight wedge at the moment. I'm assuming we're going to break out around 10 o'clock, one way or the other. Okay, it is 10 o'clock now, so let's see what's going to happen. We are at an area of interest here, but I can't take it. I can't take the bounce to the upside because this trigger right here, or not trigger, sorry, reversal candle is still underneath this trend line, and you can see we're kind of stuck. All right, so we can delete these two trend lines here. We've gone right through them. again, you had this reversal signal here to go back higher, but we still have resistance overhead with these trend lines. And so the reason why I like to use some of these trend lines is that it also helps, it prevents you from taking these reversal trades and getting stopped over and over and over again. And I speak from experience, it would have been really frustrating. Think about how many stop losses you would have taken. This trade would have worked for 8 points. This trade would have stopped you out. And this trade would have almost stopped you out here. So yeah, it would have stopped you out right there. So it's just a good way to also be very selective about the types of trades you are getting into. It helps, it prevents over trading, and it prevents lower quality setups as well. And the nice thing about preventing over trading it is that you could get carried away with over trading if you don't have a really good tight system on the Renko, and you would end up paying a ton of commission and fees if you decided to over trade. So that's another way you would lose money. Okay, we're finally breaking through this downward trend line here. Let's see what price wants to do. We draw a new downward trend line. You can see we're coming back into this area of interest. We're getting this bounce again, but we potentially could be running right back into this area of resistance right here with this trend line. So you can see the hesitation here with the price. It's like, can we go up? No, never mind. You know, it's just very indecisive. And then you literally are getting another signal to go back higher here. Now, there is a concept called second entry, or which typically, if price wants to try it a second time, the probability is more in your favor that it works. But that's, again, I think it becomes a really hard exercise to try to count which one was the first entry and which one was the second entry. And so I stopped doing that. This was maybe me two years ago. We will update our trend lines here. Delete this one. You do have a reversal signal to go down, but we have this trend line in the way here. And you can see buyers are buying it up. And we're getting right back into this range that we've been stuck at for the last 10 minutes or so. And if you can zoom out, you could see we've been sort of chopping back and forth. We'll go ahead and delete this trend line here. We can delete this trend line here. We'll end up probably drawing this trend line here if this continues going down. Yep, so we're going to be drawing a new trend line like this. This would be normally being a bearish signal. We just don't have room for our 8 points. We have a low and a higher low in this trend line, potentially in the way that might act as support. So we just have to sit on our hands and be really, really patient. And I'll be honest, this price action is really not that great. But if you follow all your rules, you can potentially prevent yourself from getting trapped over and over. Yeah, thanks, Doug. Yeah, just trying to be patient, really. I mean, really good traders take very few trades and take very precise and calculated, patient trades. And don't get me wrong, there's a part of me, especially when if I start going on tilt and I start deviating from my plan and start doing some really marginal things, I then end up over trading, taking marginal setups, taking trades I shouldn't be trading, being highly impatient. And that's just a recipe for disaster, especially in the long run. And you can see every signal that we've gotten at to this point hasn't really worked because we've been stuck in this really tight range. And that's why all of these signals, because of our parameters and our rule set, we wouldn't be able to take them. So we just patiently wait until we can break out of this range. And it looks like we want to. So we can delete this line. But now we're going to have to draw this line. So you could... I appreciate that, Doug. Yeah, it's still really using the same system of reversals at key areas, and it's easier to spot when the reversal is occurring because you're literally starting to see the bricks go in the other direction. And the premise is, let's wait for price to get into a key area. Let's see how price behaves. And can we take that reversal or continuation in that direction or the opposite direction if the runway is clear? That's really the premise of this system. So let me tell you what would have constituted a trigger, but not one that we would technically take, right? So what is a key area in this case? We have two key areas. We have this T line, which is the 233 exponential moving average, which is really specific to the Renko chart. And then we have this dotted blue line, which is a standard deviation level off of the VWAP, and the VWAP's all the way down here. So this is the +1 standard deviation. So what I would be looking for is, like you said, a pullback to retest the standard deviation level here, and then a new set of 4 bricks going up, and I would then can take it bullish. That would constitute a bullish trigger. But in this specific case, we wouldn't do that because we have this trend line, that's this downward trend line that would be in the way of that move. But imagine if we didn't have trend lines in the way and the runway was clear and we actually did get a legitimate trigger lower, or sorry, a bullshit, sorry, not bullshit, pullback, excuse my language, a pullback lower, which is something like these candles, these red candles here, and then we got this bounce up. So this would be a legit pullback right here, right? We got some bearish candles, and now if we get 4 bullish candles in a row, this constitutes a trigger off of a key area. The problem is, where this trigger occurred was still underneath this trend line. But if the runway was clear, this would have been your trigger here at the 4th brick level, and your stop loss would be down here, 2 ticks below the initial bullish candle that went higher. And you can literally see that trend line that we drew earlier is acting as resistance right now, right? But imagine we didn't have that trend line, this would have triggered us in to go bullish, and I would take 8 points of profit, and it would typically be around 7-point stop loss. That is correct. We would be looking for 8 points, and we would just rinse and repeat and do that over and over again. There is a version of this strategy where I am trading multiple contracts and I take a majority of my position off at those 8 points, and then I leave a runner to see if it wants to keep going higher and higher and higher. Right now I'm just trading a one mini contract strategy. So when I'm risking 7 points, I'm risking $140, and when I'm looking to make 8 points, I'm looking to make $160. And you can see it failed right there because that trend line we drew earlier did in fact act as resistance. And now we're stuck back in this range. And you can clearly see the range on the Renko. I mean, if you look at the 5-minute chart, for example, on the NQ, you can also see we're kind of stuck here, right? This is the box that we're in right now. We're stuck in this box. And sometimes it might not be that intuitive to see on a 5-minute chart or even a 1-minute chart. 1-minute chart, you can definitely see we're stuck, right? We're oscillating back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But I feel like on the Renko, it's just so much easier to see. You can see we're literally going back and forth. So now we're breaking through this trend line and this trend line. So the price action, I mean, the price action, unfortunately, it's just not very tradable at the moment. But what's cool about the Renko too is you can potentially anticipate where the next move is going to be and whether or not you want to take the trade. So the next area of interest is if we can come back up to this T line and get a reversal to go back down. The problem is we have a lot of support underneath us, and so I don't think we'll be able to get those 8 points if we go bearish. And so when you're also looking at the Renko, you got to ask yourself, where are my next potential areas of interest? So I've already mentioned one of them. That's that T line right there, which is the 233 exponential moving average. The next area of interest, if we keep going higher, is going to be the standard deviation level. And then the next area of interest, if we keep going higher, is going to be the prior all-time high, or the current all-time high, I should say. And the next area of interest, if we keep going higher, is going to be 100. The next area of interest is going to be the second standard deviation level. And if we end up going bearish, the next area of interest is the 50 level. And if we keep going bearish underneath that, the next area of interest is VWAP. So the important thing is you just wait. Wait for price to get into this, to an area of interest, see how it behaves. Do we get a reversal and change directions altogether, or do we get a pullback and a continuation in that trend? And is the runway clear? If the runway is clear at a key area where you know you can get it about 10 points, then you take it, because you're only looking for 8. So this is an example of it coming back up into this key area. It failed at standard deviation, although it didn't quite touch it. And then it triggered lower underneath the T line. And if we didn't have this upward trend line in the way, if we didn't have these two trend lines in the way either, we would have taken this bearish for 8 points. Now, what some people do when the market is trending in a trading range like this, it's not trending, it's the opposite of trending. It's just in a trading range, it's going back and forth. They typically just end up buying the low and selling, or selling near the high, and shorting the high and buying it back near the low. I don't necessarily like doing that, because sometimes you will eventually break the trend like we did here. Now the question becomes, do we have room if we wanted to reverse back up? And the answer is no. We have this trend line in the way now. And so what I'm looking for is, well, it's too late now, but I was looking for it to come back down. We break through 650 and go and retest potentially VWAP, but that's not what it decided to do. But it did come into an area of interest, and look what happened. We got a reversal. So if you pay attention to these areas of interest, that's where these reversals are occurring. Now what's cool is if we get a bearish signal, do we have enough room? No. We don't have enough room to take it back down to the downside. Now, do we have enough room? This is marginal, but I'll see if I can get in there cheaper. If it gets away from me, it gets away from me. But it looks like this would have been a legitimate setup here. That worked. So this is an example of coming back into an area of interest. We get that reversal we're looking for. We get the 4 bricks, and there was enough room for us to take it for 8 points. So this was an example of a trade I would have taken. I just didn't get in time. You multiply that number by 20. One mini contract is worth $20 per point. So 7 points would be $140 risk. And 8 points would be $160 profit. Now we got a reversal to go back up. Problem is we don't have the room to make 8 points before hitting this T line. So this is why we skipped this one. We skipped this bullish entry here. Yeah, and you see the reversal happening at this key area again. You see it over and over and over and over again. The question is, can we take the reversal with room? And in this case, we couldn't. We had 50 and this trend line in the way. And sometimes it doesn't matter. Price will just go and break those levels anyway, but you don't want to be counting on that. So the next, now we're sandwiched in between two levels of interest. If it comes back down the VWAP, which is what it looks like it wants to do, we might be able to take it. But I don't like that we have this pullback before we go down to test VWAP. Because the reason why I don't like that now is because I'm going to end up having to draw this trend line. But I would prefer this pullback. I want this pullback to be really deep. I want it to go, I want this pullback to be really deep. Even if it goes all the way up to 50, that would actually be great, because then we could potentially take a reversal going bearish off of the 50 to come back down. So, like this, yep. I jumped the gun a little bit here, but I kind of knew what I was looking for. This is going to be its stop loss. Yeah, it's unfortunate. That was a stop. I thought this setup was actually really good. We had a clean reversal off the 50 to come back down. We had plenty of room to hit 8 points before hitting this trend line here, and to potentially come all the way down and retest VWAP. So and you can see it really wants to come down. It just thinks that I got stopped out. So the idea behind my trade was correct, and you did end up hitting my target, but you don't want to get in the habit of sliding your stop loss just because one trade didn't work, you know? That's not a good thing to do. Now, if it comes all the way down to VWAP and we get a reversal, we're going to take it back up. I would have preferred it actually touch VWAP. So this is a reversal here. Can I get into it? Can it get me in? There we go. But I mean, this follows all of my rules, and unfortunately it's another stop loss. And that's just the way it works sometimes. It stinks, but at this point, I'm looking to see where my next low was. I think it would have looked something like this. And we wouldn't have been able to take this bearish setup right here, because the trigger happened before this trend line. You can see price is stuck here at view up. See, this is what I wanted this trade to do. I wanted this trade literally bounce off VWAP to go up and do that, but here we are. We have this upward trend line now, so we can't take this reversal to come back down. So this reversal here, we had the T line in the way, but we might be able to take this reversal down here. No, it happened right above the trend line. I was hoping it'd be below it. I'm really just trying to follow my rules. This trade did work, but it didn't follow my rules. We don't have room to take this back to the upside here. We have two trend lines that are in the way. Trying to see if there's other trend lines we could be drawing at this point. I have to zoom out. And there's this low here. So the next level is this wick here. Let me connect it real quick. It's really hard to see when the candles are that small. Yeah, the price action right now is not that great. Okay, the question is, do we have enough room to take this if we retest VWAP? And the answer is yes, we have enough room to take a reversal. But I didn't like that it pulled back here because now I'm forced to draw. Okay, the next area of interest is going to be 6,000. If we can get a bounce off 6,000, we can go back up. We can't take it at VWAP anymore because we have this new upward trend line. 40, down here at 28. We do have enough room to take the bounce back up. But not anymore though. This little wick here actually creates problems for us. So now what I would prefer is for us to go all the way up through the range and go all the way up and retest 50. Because now I don't have room to take the bounce here to go back up with this downward trend line. But now I would, if we came back down, because we have this new trend line now, if we came back down the VWAP and we decided to go back higher, I can take that bullish. Not anymore. Let's just see. See, now the trend lines are too aggressive. In fact, this would have been potentially a bearish signal here. Is that right? Yeah, I don't know if this was a legitimate trigger or not. So now we have this trend line that's in the way. We are in an interesting area because if we switch back to the 5-minute, you could see we're right underneath these two EMAs right here, the 8 EMA and the 21 EMA. Yeah, this price action is not that great. I know I keep saying that, but man, we do need the government to open back up because a lot of the news that we typically would get at 8:30 in the morning would drive the volatility into the market, which would create better opportunities for day trading. But because of all of this uncertainty that has occurred because the government shut down, it has created, unfortunately, this sort of choppy environment. The next area of interest is if we could come back up to 50 and we get a clear runway, we can take it back down. Okay, looks like we want to come back up into the view up zone. I do have this trend line in the way though, so I can't take this bounce here. Again, I couldn't take this higher because the initial signal was underneath the trend line. If we go back to the 5 minute, you guys can see we're still stuck in this range here underneath these two EMAs. I don't like this upward trend line that I had to draw here because now I can't take this reversal coming back down. Because we are approaching another key area of interest. But it looks like buyers are actually gaining momentum. So the next potential trade is this pullback, and if we get a signal to go higher, we can potentially take it. So I would call this a minor pullback. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a try to see if we can continue higher. And I'm testing to see if this is actually a legitimate setup or not. And it was a very, very small stop loss though. We risked maybe 3 points. Okay, so now we actually have a legitimate bearish signal here. Or, let me rephrase that. We actually have, yeah, there's that bearish move here. And we do have room to take the reversal back up here if it reverses back up. I'll get into it a little bit earlier. We didn't officially get the 4 bricks, but I thought this would be a really good area to potentially bounce. Okay, we did need to wait for those 4 bricks, like, apparently, so. And again, this one triggered underneath this trend line. And what was crazy was I had the right idea here, it just didn't follow through, and then it ends up making the move. I've had 3 of those trades today, which is really frustrating, because we're talking about $300, almost a $900 shift actually, because it's the difference between losing 140 and making 160, so that's $300 difference times 3, so we're talking $900 difference in the P&L just from those 3 trades not working. Which is very frustrating. We don't. Do we have room to take this lower? 38? No. You can see we don't have room. The target is underneath. We can't take this reversal higher here because we have this downward trend line from way back here. You can see it didn't work. Oh, it wasn't an official trigger as well. We didn't get the 4 bars, just like this wasn't an official trigger down here at 11:04. We don't have room to take this bounce up here either. Maybe we will if we get the VWAP bounce instead. We don't have room to take it bearish because VWAP's in the way. Can't take this one either. Got that trend line in the way. At this point, this price action is like watching paint dry. It's so slow. Looks like we're trying to transition back up. Problem is, every reversal that we get signaled doesn't have the room to actually work. You can see here, this signaled higher, it did go higher, it didn't have room to make your 8 points. This signaled lower, but it's running into it signaled above the T line and the trend line. Just shows you how tight our price action is. If price action was a lot in a much better trending environment, then you would have room to make the moves going up or down. But because we're in such a tight trading range, every single trigger is met with a very tight range and doesn't have room. It's very claustrophobic is the word probably that I'm looking for. I might also have to make some adjustments to the trading strategy if we are in a trading range like this. Like, are there ways for us to capitalize on this? So I'll have to think about it. One of the ways is you could end up taking the trades near the points of interest areas and going maybe for 5 points instead of 8. I'll have to experiment a little bit with this, but today's price action has been very slow and claustrophobic. The last 2 stop losses we took, it was my fault. I shouldn't have taken those trades. We've taken a total of 6 trades, believe it or not, in about a little under 2 hours. 1 winner, 1 break even, which would have been a winner, and then 4 losers. But 2 of those losers were my fault because I didn't follow my rules. So it's a very frustrating trading session, to say the least. Excuse me. think I'm gonna go ahead and cut the stream, guys. I don't like today's price action. I thought it would get at least better, but I'm going to be looking back and seeing what we could have done better. Obviously those 2 trades I shouldn't have taken were false positives, were my fault. And then you guys saw the 2 trades we did take that were legitimate, that should have worked, and they ended up working, but it stopped me out before it worked. So that's very frustrating. So I'm gonna look back and see if we can make some adjustments and kind of go from there. I appreciate you guys joining, especially for the ones who stayed for the entirety of the stream. I really appreciate you guys. I hope you guys have a great rest of your Tuesday, and I'll see you guys soon. I'll see if I can stream tomorrow. It really depends on if I need more time to make these adjustments and figure out how to optimize the strategy, especially in a tight trading range. So if you guys have any questions, please let me know, and we'll talk again very, very soon. Have a good one.